Hello, this is the 11 April 2014 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our guest today is Chuck Allott, the Executive Director of the Aquidneck Island Land Trust. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Doug.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could start by, could you give us a little idea of what is the Aquidneck Island Land Trust and what do you guys do?
The Aquidneck Land Trust is a land trust by its name, which means that we conserve land on Aquidneck Island. Our geographical area is Aquidneck Island. And we preserve open space for farmland, for watershed protection, for parkland, and then in Newport we also protect Newport Estates properties. Aquidneck Island's kind of a unique place. Open space is very diverse on this island. It serves a lot of different purposes, and we try to strategize on each of those types of open space. So the Land Trust has been in existence since 1990. We're a 501c3, which means we're tax exempt, and we are an accredited land trust, one of only three accredited land trusts, four accredited land trusts in Rhode Island. We are a staff of 6. I have an excellent staff that helps me in conserving land on Aquidneck Island. I've been in the position for just over a year now as the full-time executive director. Ted Clement was in the position before that and had been very successful, so I have big shoes to fill, but I've had a real action-packed year, and I think we're making some great progress on protecting open space on Aquidneck Island, but in particular here in Portsmouth.
Yeah, I think when we get into the watershed issue, I think people will see a major reason why it is so important.
Right.
Before we get to that, though, could you tell us a little bit about your own background and how you got into this field?
Sure. By trade, I'm a lawyer, and I was practicing in Middletown, Rhode Island, living in Portsmouth, and in the 80s there was general legislation that came down that required new comprehensive community plans, and it required community involvement in that process. So I got involved in developing a comprehensive plan in Portsmouth with a good friend of mine at the time, Peter Merritt, and we were the chairs of the land use element of that comprehensive planning process. And in going through that whole process, one of the things that we realized at that point in time is how quickly the face of Aquidneck Island was changing. Development was just gobbling up open space at that point in time. So we decided that we and people from other communities that were also working on comprehensive plans decided to get together and to create a land trust where we would actually preserve open spaces. So I was one of the founding members in 1990, have been on the board for many years since, and was really looking to get back into land conservation on a full-time basis. I've been practicing law for over 25 years, and my passion was land conservation, so I really wanted to get back into it, just at about the time that Ted had decided he was heading for
very well then, really.
He was heading for Hawaii. So yes, it did work out very well. So I'm very excited to be in this position, and it's been a great year.
Now, do you still practice law?
I do not. Nope. This is a full-time gig, and it's that and then some, I would say.
That's great, but the nice thing is it's also your passion. So.
It is. I love it.
Well, okay, now getting back to how do you think your first year in the saddle here went?
I think it went very well. There was a transition period. We didn't quite get as much land area under our belts in this last year as I would have liked. We've got a lot of projects that are in play and hopefully will close in the very near future. But I also had to get up to speed on running a nonprofit organization, which was something new to me. I had been practicing law. So one of the things that I did was to go back to school for nonprofit management and leadership, which has been kind of a busy thing to do on top of trying to run a nonprofit. So it's been a very busy year getting up to speed with the organization and keeping our mission of preserving open space going forward. But it has been a very exciting year. I've learned a lot about Aquidneck Island.
Yeah, and you've also made some very, at least the Aquidneck Island Land Trust has made some very public and kind of interesting acquisitions of open spaces here on the island, to the point where I think a lot of people are saying, are you still doing this, or is it all over?
Well, it's a question that I have to grapple with every day. I mean, one of the problems when you have a goal of, and Ted had set out a goal of preserving 2,000 acres on Aquidneck Island. Well, we attained that goal, but the problem is there's at least 3,000 more priority acres that we need to preserve above and beyond that initial goal. So the first 2,000 was a great achievement, but we still have a long way to go in both protecting the watersheds for drinking water quality, but also the farmland of Portsmouth and Middletown, which is so important for local food production, which we are way behind the rest of the country in.
Really?
We only produce locally about 1% of our food source in Rhode Island, which is one of the worst in the country. Unfortunately, a lot of the land, well, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the land on Aquidneck Island that's in agriculture is in nursery stock. So that land isn't being used for food production. If it were, we'd be doing a little bit better than 1%. But that's clearly a number we need to do better on. I mean, I think as we see the droughts in the West, we're going to see that we need to have better control over our local food production. So local farming is a high priority for the Land Trust.
Now, so a farmer can work with you then and take care of some of the financial burden of maintaining a farm. How does that work for the farmer? How does that work as a positive thing for the farmer and the community?
So what the Land Trust works with primarily are conservation easements, which means that we hold an easement to ensure that the property is never developed, but the farmer or the landowner keeps the property and can keep that property in full use. We pay for the conservation easement on farmland.
Right.
We get donations sometime, but more often than not, we're actually paying for the full fair market value for a conservation easement on that property, which, given to the farmer, gives him the ability to keep the farm going. So it's giving him the credit he needs, essentially, so he can keep going forward.
Sure. I imagine there's a lot of pressure on people to. One of the local farmers said at a town council meeting, the last crop of Portsmouth farmers is condominiums. So there's a lot of pressure. It's easier to just sell the land than it is to try to keep working a farm. It's tough work. You know?
It is very tough work, and it takes a certain passion. Many of the people that we see who do want to conserve their farms, it's because their parents and their grandparents farmed it before them, and they have a true passion to keep that going forward.
Well, when we started this discussion about you coming on here, you mentioned that the focus now is on watershed areas. And until you looked at the stuff you sent me, I didn't quite understand what a watershed is. Could you explain what a watershed is and also why it's so important going forward here?
Sure. On Aquidneck Island, we have 7 reservoirs that serve the community for drinking water supplies. 3 of which are in Portsmouth, the rest are in Middletown and Newport. And those reservoirs, the water that runs off the land that goes into those reservoirs is the watershed for that reservoir. And what we're trying to do is protect the land areas within those watersheds, which will essentially, open space will purify the water that runs off of roofs and pavement, so that when it gets to the drinking water reservoir, it's in much better condition than it would otherwise be.
So the problem is, if it's we just had heavy rains here, so everybody can understand the runoff issue. If it runs off of like either roads or houses, the stuff just goes right into the reservoir with a lot of pollutants in it.
Correct.
Oil, tar, crud, all kind of junk.
Bacterias from septic systems, all of those various things run into either the reservoirs or into rivers that then run into the reservoirs.
And then if there are lands around that undeveloped land, It gives the water a chance to filtrate through the soil, and also cuts down the stuff running on the surface gets pulled into the ground as it goes.
Correct.
So you're much better off that way.
Absolutely, and it lessens the need for the communities to do hard stormwater infrastructure. If you've got the green areas that is filtering the land, there's less need for them to do the huge cost of hard infrastructure, as well as the purification systems that Newport Water has to put on the water that comes through their system.
We've seen some of the schemes they've had to spend money on down in Newport.
Exactly.
And ultraviolet and all the rest of these kind of different techniques to try to keep the water clean. And this is water that we drink.
That's right. And quite frankly, they're not always keeping right up with that. It's much less expensive. It's much more effective.
To fix it before you have the
Exactly.
problem.
To fix it in the watershed before it actually gets into the drinking water system.
Okay, now the areas in Portsmouth, just generally here, Lawton Valley is the big reservoir. Now I think, doesn't Newport own that anyway?
Yes.
So, but people can get a feel for the land around that is what feeds into the reservoir.
That's correct.
St. Mary's Pond is another one, and the land that feeds into that, a good chunk of which is currently undeveloped, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and then what was the third one?
Sisson's Pond.
Sisson's Pond. Okay, and again, the areas that feed into that, and what you're looking for is to try to maintain or even increase the amount of undeveloped land that is part of that watershed.
Correct. Both for the filtering that it does, but it's also the absence of pavement. If it's open, then it's not pavement, and then the pollutants from pavement aren't going into those drinking water supplies.
Yeah. Well, I know one of your email newsletters had a good description of all this, and I hope, is this on your website by any chance? Because it probably should be. It's a great.
I don't think it is, but I'll look at doing that.
Yeah, it's a real eye opener to see what this stuff really means, and you can see why DEM and EPA and everybody else is getting on board with this watershed protection thing.
Right. And that's the other thing I wanted to say, is that there's a real confluence of events taking place that are really making our work in the watershed a lot easier. DEM has come out with what are called TMDLs, which are total daily maximum loads, which is essentially DEM saying that the towns have to do something to clean up these impacted waters. So there are TMDLs that are mandating the town to do something. There is also Hurricane Sandy resiliency funding available, which the Land Trust is seeking in 3 of the Middletown watersheds. So that's a whole funding source. Resiliency, we're going to see a lot more money becoming available for grants for resiliency building. And then you have sea level rise as well. So all of these things are coming together that are really influencing the fact that we need to clean up these watersheds. We need to be concerned about the water quality here on Aquidneck Island as well as other places.
Well, I think too there's a public information thing here that you need to get the word out to the public, because again, people can argue over whether it's nice to have open space.
Right.
But when you start talking about the water that we drink, and the water we drink, the amounts are basically fixed. The population is slowly increasing.
Right.
And so that makes this stuff all the more important.
So one of the things that we're working on, and again, this is on 3 watersheds in Middletown, is actually coming up with a comprehensive conservation plan. As a part of the grant that we're seeking from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Foundation, there will be a water assessment done of that watershed. And based upon that, we want to come up with a comprehensive conservation plan where we're looking at not parcel by parcel, but we're looking at the entire watershed as one piece and saying, here is all of the open space that we need to preserve, and looking at it more comprehensively and trying to also fundraise it more comprehensively.
Now, do you work with the planners of the different towns?
We will be, as a part of that process, we will certainly be doing that, because part of the implementation of this will be comprehensive plans in each of the communities, which currently address open space, but we want to do it on a more scientific level, showing directly what impact, positive impact that open space has on water quality.
I see you've gotten some assistance from Salve Regina University and Roger Williams. Could you discuss that for a second?
Yeah, the water shed assessment that the Land Trust did in 2011, which we're currently using in acquiring watershed parcels, we have created 3 tiers of priority parcels based upon their proximity to the waters, to the actual water courses, whether it's a reservoir or a river, and also other attributes with respect to each of those properties. So what we go for is what we call Tier 1 parcels, the very top priority parcels within these drinking water watersheds. And that study was put together, both Ted Clement and a professor from Salve Regina University, who's on our board, Jim Chase, had put this study together. Now, going forward, we want to go to that next step and really create some hard science about how it impacts the water quality. But clearly, these open space parcels, which we're preserving today, do impact water quality.
Now, do we have any of those top tier ones here in Portsmouth?
We absolutely do. We just preserved one this last couple weeks, which is the Feria Farm on Jepson Lane. That was a Tier 1 parcel directly adjacent to Sisson's Pond.
Okay.
And it's also a farm. So we have protected a farm with a buffer, so we're also protecting the watershed. So that property is a perfect example of how sometimes our efforts have dual conservation values.
Kind of a win-win thing.
Absolutely.
I also think it's great to get the local universities involved in projects like this.
It is.
They can give something back to the community aside from payment in lieu of taxes. So I think it's a good win-win thing all around.
Absolutely.
Now, does the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission have anything to do with any of this, or you?
In the process of doing this comprehensive land conservation planning, I would think that the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission will definitely have a piece of that. To date, most of the work that we have done has been in partnerships with the towns, with state DEM, with the federal government in some cases. The Planning Commission has done open space studies, but we're kind of the boots on the ground organization. We're actually acquiring the property. Their function's more of planning. So going forward, as we're doing this comprehensive conservation planning, I would expect that we will be partnering with them.
Now we had Tina Dolan of the AIPC on a few weeks ago, and one of the things that she's, one of their bigger projects had to do with the mapping issue and things like that. Does that all kind of help feed into this project?
It certainly will. I mean, on our staff, I've got a stewardship director who also has that mapping capability. So we do a lot of the mapping in-house, but because we're talking about a very comprehensive conservation study, I would think that an overall community mapping process, probably through the Aquidneck Planning Commission, would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, as I say, I think programs like this can be part of the public education on this thing, but I do think this is something that I think everybody in town should be for and proponents of, because it's something we have to think about in the future. Now, aside from watershed per se, what else are you doing for us lately here in Portsmouth? What are you doing in Portsmouth?
Again, our other top priority is protection of farmland. So we are in Portsmouth, we are looking at a number of different farms. Recently, about a month ago, we held a succession planning seminar for farmers, and we had a great showing at Sweetberry Farm, a lot of island farmers, but also farmers off the island. And we had an attorney, a lender, a farm lender. We had an actual farmer who's dealt with succession planning issues. And the interesting thing we had was a mediator. There is a mediation organization that has a program specifically dealing with farms and agriculture, because so often there are many different members of the family that don't always agree as to whether the land should remain in farming or how it should be used going forward. So this mediation organization tries to work out those issues. So it was very interesting to hear what they had to say.
That's a good idea. And what else is going on here in town? I know you're working on the St. Mary's issue as a watershed issue.
Well, we're also working on St. Mary's. The land around St. Mary's Church is one of the projects that we've been working on for a number of years.
For both farm and...
For a lot of different, again, that's a parcel that has many different conservation values. It's protection of farmland, but it's also protection of the St. Mary's watershed. We had hoped that we would have closed that a year ago. We've had some difficulty dealing with the bureaucracy of Washington. One of our very large funders is USDA. And with all the gridlock in Washington, it's been kind of difficult dealing with them and getting approvals through that process. But
not surprising, however.
No, not surprising, but very frustrating, I have to say. But we're hoping that we will close on that property very soon. That will be a preservation of about 70 acres.
Okay.
And for any of you who know the property, it's right along East Main Road, and it is a pristine piece of open space. Great. It's really an important parcel. Great. And then in the last year, we had also worked on the Glen project, and that did not go through. The town council decided that they did not want to go forward with that project. And while that's frustrating, it's also not atypical. We have a lot of projects that we put on the table and we negotiate with people. Not every one of those goes forward. And again, that's a very important property, a very high priority parcel to the land trust. And Ted had for years been working on trying to get a conservation easement on the property. I am sure for years into the future I will keep doing that.
Okay, so it still is an option then.
Sooner or later, I think that we probably will be able to preserve it. I understand fully where the council was coming from. They view it as a town asset, and they just couldn't rationalize giving up a lot of the value of that property. We had put a significant offer on the table, but the council did not think that at the time that was the right thing to do, and I respect them.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed that they didn't bring it to a referendum, but because I think everybody I've talked to seems to think we should take a hard look at this. But anyway,
I think so.
Again, it's maybe in the future as long as it's still open. One of the things that intrigued me was you mentioned the town pond.
Yes.
Our town pond?
Yes, the town pond is owned by DEM.
Wow.
And that property...
Down there by Founder's Brook?
Yes.
That area? Yeah,
yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's owned by DEM, and the land trust has a conservation easement on it. And it's basically remained kind of unused. There is a path down there. There is parking down there. Yeah. But there hasn't been a whole lot of use.
Are you talking about Founder's Brook?
Nope.
Or down...
Right at Town Pond.
Down at the big pond. Not Bluebell Cove? Or...
No.
You're talking about the pond right on the street there?
Right on the street across from the Roger Williams facility.
Right. Okay.
So at that property, there is a trail that goes up one side of that property.
Right.
But this last year, we've really been looking at the potential of doing a loop trail similar to the Secana Greenway Trail that we have that runs from the Glen all the way down to Newport Vineyards. It's a 10-mile trail. We have a lot of interest in doing other passive recreational trails on the island. And Town Pond's one that we would really like to look at, both for a walking trail, but also for a kayak landing, since you could kayak in and out of that property.
Right now it's just kind of muddy to get in and out of. I've done it.
It is. So the difficulty with it is trying to figure out how much boardwalk we would need in order to put a trail around that, because a lot of it is wetlands. So we're looking into it. We did meet with DEM, and they were very excited about the idea. So we're hoping that we can do something with that in the future. And we want to try to do more projects in the north end of the island. A lot of our open space preservation's been in the southern part where there are large farm parcels, but we hope to do more in the north part of the island as well.
I think there are several areas that could use something like that. But,
Absolutely.
I'm hopeful in the future they'll come to pass.
Yep.
You guys have a lot of events going on during the year. I wonder if you'd like to talk about those.
I would love to. One of the things we have going is Earth Day is always a big event for the Land Trust. We have a lot of events coming down the pike with that. On April 15th, we will be presenting a film with Newport Film, and they have a green screen program that they do every year, which is like 8 different films. We will be presenting all those films, and the first one's going to be on April 15th. On April 16th, I'm going to the Portsmouth High School to make a Earth Day presentation. On the 22nd of April, which I believe is Earth Day, we're doing a cleanup at Myantonomy Park in Newport. And then we will be attending a Salve Earth Day fair. We have interactive walks that we're doing. We've got an herb walk coming up, a Clean Ocean Access sponsored cleanup of a couple beaches. So we have a lot of different programs going forward, and I would just ask
people go to your website.
Go to our website. All of those different dates will be found there, but we've got a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I see here you have a film on birding at
Yes.
Penfield School.
Yes, that will be coming up on I forgot what that is. April 25th at Penfield School.
So it all comes up in within the next month.
A lot of it is coming up then, but we have activities all throughout the year.
Okay, and what is the watershed panel, and who's going to be on it?
So that's going to be on October 23rd. We're still shaping up all the people that will be on it, but we're hoping to get someone from WRNI, the state NPR station, to actually moderate that program. So we're real excited about that as well.
Yeah. Well, I think I think your website, number one, is very informative. And
Yep.
I think if people go there, they can find out just about everything about the projects you're working on.
Yep.
And I particularly, as I say, I particularly like this one article from your newsletter. I guess it was July 7th, way back a couple of years ago now. But it's called Good Dirt. And it's all about what the watershed is and why it's so important.
Right.
So,
the Good Dirt is actually our newsletter, so
that's-
you'll see
that's
a
the name
lot
of-
of
that's the
different...
name of your newsletter.
Yes,
Okay.
but that is an interesting one on watersheds.
yeah, and like I say, I would recommend you put
Yep.
at least this article
Will
back
do.
on there because it's an excellent primer.
Could I make one last pitch?
Absolutely, please do.
So we suffer from what NPR does, I think. You can listen for free to NPR. You can walk our trails and see the pristine views
Right.
that we preserve for free. By free, I mean no cost to you, but there is a cost to us.
So-
and I would just ask people of the community to support the Land Trust and what we do, both financially and personally, because we can't do it without you.
Okay, Chuck, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Doug Smith signing off. See you next time.